What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Paul Brettel here. As always, thank you for joining me. We're here to talk about the second day of Green Bay Packers training camp practices. But first, as always, you can find my work over at Dairyland Express and Packers Wire. Got 2, 3, sometimes even 4 articles per day out at those sites. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And as always, hit like, hit subscribe on the video. I greatly appreciate it. So let's dive into my observations and takeaways from day 2 of practice. Before I get into the actual play on the field, just some notes on injuries, starting lineups, backups, all that stuff to give you an idea of where everyone was. So first up, Tavarius Moore, Caleb Jones, and Tariq Carpenter were all placed on the non-football injury list prior to training camp beginning. All 3 of those players were back on the football field. Dontavian Wicks, Packers rookie wide receiver, he participated in Wednesday's practice, but was held out on Thursday reportedly with a concussion. Now let's dive on in. From a position standpoint, something I want to make note of is Innis Gaines. He's listed on the Packers roster, their official roster as a safety, but during the individual position drills, he was working with the cornerbacks. And really, that shouldn't come as much as a surprise. He spent most of his time this offseason and even seeing some starting snaps last season out of the slot. Played 31 snaps in week 16, 17, 18 last season from the slot. During these first 2 training camp practices and going back to mini camp, he's been the go-to slot option with the second team defense. And what his path to the final roster looks like right now as a safety, I'm not exactly sure. It's a crowded room. It's a room with a lot of question marks, but it's a crowded room. There's Rudy Ford, Darnell Savage, Dallin Levitt, Jonathan Owens, Tavarius Moore, Anthony Johnson, and then Innis Gaines. There's 7 players right there. And at most, I'm guessing the Packers probably just keep 5. So there's a lot to be figured out in terms of who those 5 are going to be. But what I will say about Gaines is he is someone who can contribute to this Green Bay Packers team in 2023. There's the special teams perspective. Last season, he got a late start in terms of contributing to the special teams unit. So he ranked 19th on the team in total special team snaps, but he finished the season 6th in solo tackles. So he's shown that he can make some plays in that phase of the game. And that's a phase that we know the Green Bay Packers have put a lot more emphasis on. From a defensive standpoint, he's not going to be one of the starters. But as we look at this Packers cornerback room, as deep as it is, as talented it is at the top, what they don't have a ton of are true slot cornerback options. You can put Keyshawn Nixon into that category, but after that, there's not a lot of players left. Eric Stokes, Rasul Douglas, those guys are better outside on the boundary. Jair Alexander, he's someone that you want just following around the opponent's top receiver, regardless of whether it's inside or out. Corey Valentine, Carrington Valentine, they've been the Packers' boundary options with the second team defense. The one slot cornerback that we look at that could be seen, or cornerback that we could see as a slot option, is Shamar John Charles. But at best, he's 7th on the depth chart right now. I'm not sure the Packers keep 7 cornerbacks on the roster. That would be going quite heavy at that position group. He's someone last season when he came back from injury, he was oftentimes a healthy scratch on Sundays. So again, he's someone who's going to have a tough time making the roster potentially, at least given how things potentially are shaking out now. So that's a role that Innis Gaines can fill. He can be that secondary option in the slot if needed. He can be someone who contributes on special teams. So again, how he gets to the 53, that's still to be determined. There's a lot of football that has to be played over the next month, but he's someone to absolutely keep your eyes on in that safety room. As far as the starting offensive and defensive lineups go, they were pretty similar to as they were on Wednesday. Zach Tom was still at right tackle. Yosh Nijman was starting at left tackle. Matt LaFleur said prior to Wednesday's practice that similarly to last season with Bakhtiari, where they were fluid with his practice schedule to make sure he's prepared for Sundays, they're going to take the same approach here this summer during training camp. LaFleur said that after a full speed practice on Wednesday, he was likely either going to be held out or in a limited capacity on Thursday. And that's what we saw. So Yosh was at starting left tackle. Now, what's potentially noteworthy about this is that if we go back to the offseason programs, OTAs and minicamp, the Nijman and Tom typically they alternated days as who was starting at right tackle. One day it'd be Tom, the next it'd be Nijman. Sometimes we saw that rotation through different team drills. But you get the idea. They were both getting their fair share of reps there. 2 practices in, which again is a small sample size, we've seen Tom as the starting right tackle over Nyman in both instances. So by no means am I here to declare Sharpie and Zach Tom is the starting right tackle, but perhaps we're gaining a little insight into where the competition stands at the moment. On defense, Justin Hollins has consistently been one of the starting edge rushers across from Preston Smith. Today we saw J.J. Enagbari in that role. At safety, it was Rudy Ford and Darnell Savage. This just feels like what the starting duo is going to be come week 1. It shouldn't be a surprise. Matt LaFleur told us Savage was going to be one of the starters. He told us that a few months ago. Rudy Ford was he provided stability to the position last season, was positioned well, did his job, capable against the run, made some plays as well, came away with 3 interceptions and a fumble recovery. He did his job. He provided stability, and that's really what this position needs right now. Going to the second units, Danny Etling, not Sean Clifford, was again with the backup offense. And when it comes to the quarterback position, Sean Clifford's a 5th-round pick by the Packers this year. He's going to be on the 53-man roster. The question is, do they keep just him and Love, or can Danny Etling or Alex Magoo make enough of a push and force the Packers into keeping 3, which is something they did in 2020, keeping Rodgers, Love, and Tim Boyle. At safety, for the second day in a row, the backups were again down Levitt as well as Jonathan Ford. Anthony Johnson and Tavarius Moore, they were in that third-team defense. As I said yesterday, Anthony Johnson's a really, really exciting player. He can fill an Adrian Amos-like role in this defense, helping out against the run, filling gaps, willing tackler, but he has a lot of development to go. He's only in his second year playing the safety position. The second-team offensive line from left to right was Rasheed Walker, Royce Newman, Jake Hansen, Sean Ryan, and Caleb Jones. Those 5 seem pretty cemented in that role. Where things do change just depends if Yosh Nijman is working with the second team at this time. But that group seems pretty well fit into this role. Next up, let's get on to some of the action from the day. Jaden Reed, rookie wide receiver, he had an excellent day. We saw him used on an end around, which he ran for a big gain. And then on another play during the red zone drill, which was an emphasis for the offensive and defensive units on Thursday, had a touchdown catch. He was lined up in the slot. He ran a post route, got behind Devondre Campbell. Jair Alexander was closing in from the right. Really nice pass from Jordan Love to fit it into a tight window, and a nice catch from Jaden Reed. He's someone who brings a ton of versatility to this offense. Had the chance to talk with him in the locker room afterwards, and he said that there isn't a role that he can't fill or that he can't produce at, whether it's inside, outside, being a gadget guy as the motion man. I mean, those are all things that the Packers are going to ask him to do. But as Matt LaFleur said, the balance right now, because he is a first-year player, is making sure that they're using his versatility and everything that he can do, but first making sure that he can handle the specific responsibilities that he has and become productive in that role, become consistent in that role. So at least based on how he's been utilized so far, I mean, step 1 for the young player is to be consistent, be a steady presence from the slot, and then we'll begin to see more added to his plate, more of those gadget-type snaps, more snaps from the boundary. He's someone who brings kick and punt return experience from college as well to the NFL. So Reed, his versatility, his speed, he's someone who can be a do-it-all type of threat in this Packers offense. Speaking of motion, running back Tyler Goodson was used heavily as the motion man in a gadget-like role today. We also saw him split out in the slot, even out wide. They were moving him all over the formation. And I wrote about this over at Packers Wire earlier in the offseason, but I think motion is just going to be a much more larger, prominent role within this Packers offense with Jordan Love at quarterback. Matt LaFleur, during the Play Callers podcast with Jordan Rodriguez, sponsored by The Athletic, was noted as he was watching film on Kansas City, San Francisco, and Miami. What do those 3 teams have in common? They were the top 3 teams that used motion last season. Pre-snap motion, it can force the defense into last-second adjustments. It can leave some guesswork on their part as to what's coming, create mismatches, gets speedy players in space where they can make plays with the ball in their hands. There's just a ton of benefits to it. Takes some of the pressure, some of the burden off of the quarterback as well. So we're going to see a lot of motion this season. Tyler Goodson, Jaden Reed are two players who could absolutely fill those roles. As I said, red zone offense and defense was the emphasis today. Overall, there weren't really any egregious mistakes by Jordan Love. There was one interception on a deflected pass, but he made some really nice throws in this as well. The pass catchers that he was targeting at times also had some drops. So his overall completion percentage wasn't impressive by any means, but again, no huge mistakes, made some really nice throws as well. On the first possession was that aforementioned catch by Jaden Reed in the end zone. The second possession ended on the second play on an interception. Love was under pressure, tried to squeeze it into a tight window. Ball deflected up into the air. I think it was Jair Alexander who got his hand on it. Devondre Campbell came down with the interception. On the third possession, the offense didn't turn the ball over from a turnover or giveaway standpoint, but they failed to score with 3 incompletions. On the fourth possession, on the second play, Christian Watson was lined up in the slot on the right on a crossing route, worked his way across the entire field. We saw this a few times last season from him. He's going to be really, really effective on this type of route in this part of the field. And on the left side, Love was able to connect with him. He found a soft spot in the defense, turned up field, and was able to score in the red zone. On the fifth red zone possession, Love threw a beautifully timed pass to the left side of the end zone, again to Christian Watson. He came down with the catch. Rasul Douglas was about a half second behind from deflecting it, but it was a terrific pass by Love, had some zip on it, was in a spot where only Watson could catch it. Douglas couldn't get his hand on it, so a terrific play from those two there. On the sixth possession, there were 2 drop passes by the Green Bay pass catchers, one by Tyler Goodson, another by Luke Musgrave. On third down, Love scrambled for a few yards, set up fourth down where he found Luke Musgrave on a stick route. But again, who was there? Jair Alexander. Musgrave made the catch, but Jair Alexander stuffed him at the goal line, kept him out of the end zone. The second team offense in the red zone was led by quarterback Danny Etling. They went 3 and out. Alex Magoo with the third team offense was able to connect on third down with Bo Melton on a quick slant in the end zone. Couple overall observations. Tyler Davis. We know he had a rough preseason last year, and even training camp drop passes for him were a major issue. But I think he's someone that we're going to see on the field this season offensively. He's saw his fair share of snaps today with the offense. Might even go as far as saying that he is the best blocking tight end that the Packers have on their roster right now. And at least today, he was ahead of Tucker Kraft. He's going to have a role. This Matt LaFleur has talked about over and over and over how the transition from college to the NFL for tight ends is incredibly difficult. There's a ton of responsibilities that they have. LaFleur has called it the second toughest transition on offense outside of the quarterback position. There's going to be ups and downs from Musgrave and Kraft. We saw that yesterday from Musgraves. I talked about that in that video. What Davis can provide is, one, the blocking ability, which is already difficult for rookies to do effectively consistently. And he's someone who's been in the offense for a few seasons. There are some situations, some niche roles where having him on the field could make sense for the Packers. So he's someone that, even with the new weapons that the Packers have in the tight end room, even with Josiah DeGuara, he's someone to keep your eyes on, because I think at least early on, until the rookies get some snaps under them, some additional experience, he's going to be a factor in the offense. Doesn't mean he's going to be starting. Doesn't mean he's going to be playing 50% of the snaps, but he's going to have some sort of specific role. Working with the first team offense in the red zone drills was Malik Heath and Lou Nichols. So they had the offenses and defenses split up as the first team of each, the second team of each, and third team of each on the other side of the field. But with the first team starters was Lou Nichols and Malik Heath. Heath had a really good offseason programs. There wasn't a OTA or a mini camp practice that I was at where I didn't see him make at least one catch. He was out there today. Again, I mentioned Dontavian Wicks is out injured. Grant DeBose is still on the non-football injury list. So I think the Heath being in that group today may have been a little bit of just a need from depth, and he's someone who's performed well. Lou Nichols, Packers 7th round pick out of Central Michigan. He checks all the boxes in terms of what the Packers look for at the running back position. Brings college production to the NFL, brings ample pass blocking experience. He's someone who was targeted heavily in the passing game. Right now, it really feels like, at least based on playing time, that running back 3 battle is going to be between him and Tyler Goodson. And not to be forgotten about when determining who the winner of this battle is going to be is how each of those guys contributes on special teams. I mentioned this yesterday, want to reiterate it again, but we saw a ton of 2 tight end sets at Thursday's practice, and that's not new for the Packers. They had the second highest 12 personnel usage in football last season. We also saw a ton of 2 running back sets from Green Bay today as well. This is going to be staples, I believe, of the Packers offense this season. One, because they have the versatility. They have the ability to do so. Their running backs, their tight ends, their receivers, many of them, in terms of what their responsibilities are within their position groups, are interchangeable. They can be asked to do a lot. That really stresses defense. It creates mismatches that allows the Packers to run a variety of plays from just a few personnel groupings, which again creates those mismatches, keeps defenses guessing and off balance. So something to keep our eyes on moving forward. There weren't any, I should say, designed runs for Jordan Love, but when the pocket became to collapse, he was not afraid to tuck the ball and take off, scramble to either buy time or with the intention of trying to pick up as many yards as possible. That's definitely going to be an element that we're going to see more of in this offense. Again, not sure how many designed runs they're going to be, but if things start to break down, Love has the ability to pick up some yards. So let's be prepared to see more of that. Not sure if this should come as a surprise. I've already alluded to it. Jair Alexander had a fantastic game. The ball either isn't coming his direction because he's all over the defender, or if it does, he's right there to break the pass up. 2 other observations. The interior defensive line, the speed that this group has, they are so much faster than the previous versions of this group that we've seen. Of course, there's Kenny Clark, but adding Devontae Wyatt's role increasing, I should say, adding Colby Wood and Carl Brooks to the mix. There's just a ton of speed up front. And I wrote about this over at Packers Wire. You know, that type of defender, that versatility, that gap penetrator, that's the type of interior defender that this Joe Barry defense ideally wants. You know, going back and looking at the Brandon Staley in Los Angeles or the Vic Fangio defense where this whole system stems from, those are the type of interior defenders that they want. Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster, past iterations of interior defenders who have been a part of this Packers team and played big roles. Those are more space eaters, gap occupiers rather than penetrators. So it's really fun to see just the sideline to sideline speed that position group has, and that hopefully means a better performance against the run. Lastly, for the second day in a row, the defense won the day. The offense at the end, they had to do up downs at the end of practice while the defense watched. The big thing that stood out to me was the pass rush from the defense. Whether it was the first, second, third team offenses that were out there, there were a lot of collapse in pockets. And as Brian Gutekunst said on Tuesday when speaking with us, there's a ton of pass rush options along this defensive front, whether you're talking about the interior or the Packers' much improved edge rusher position. One other thing before we go, head over to my Twitter account. There's a cool video I was able to take and post it up there. During special teams drills off to the side, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were working out or going through reps with Jair Alexander covering them. Cool to see. And one of those, which you hope, iron sharpens iron scenarios. So that's everything that I have from Thursday's practice. Again, there's a lot to take in. You can find the article version of this over at Packers Wire. You can find all my work there, as well as at Dairyland Express. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And as always, hit like, hit subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.